You're listening to Online Pet Health Podcasts with Dr. Megan Kelly. Continuing education for veterinarian rehabilitation therapists. Learn more at onlinepethealth.com.
Hey vet rehabbers, now today we're going to be chatting about a really important topic, and it's one we've touched on before in the podcast, and it's also one that people don't often talk about themselves. Sometimes we actually don't even know we're suffering from this, and we think maybe it's just us, maybe it's our own insecurities, but the reality is that virtually everyone feels this way sometimes in their lives. So it's that feeling you don't belong where you are, and you don't think that you're good enough to do what you're doing, that you got where you are because of luck, and you might lack confidence and feel like someone else would be better than you at treating your patients. Now, Tony Brooks, he joins me. He's from the Leadership Training Workshop, and we speak about imposter moments and how to identify if this is something you are struggling with and what to do about it. Now, Tony doesn't like the term imposter syndrome, as he thinks that then we like labeling ourselves. Now, this is one of the topics we'll be covering in our online workshops at the Vet Rehab Summit. Our Vet Rehab Summit is our online veterinary rehabilitation conference we host it every year. This is our 6th one now. In addition to the day's live learning, which is on the 12th of November, we are hosting 3 online workshops leading up to the event. Now, this one workshop is called Overcoming Imposter Syndrome, and you can go to vetrehabsummit.com to register for it. Online Pet Health members, you get a members discount to the workshop. So you log into your members portal and you'll be able to sign up for the workshops there. Now, we have an awesome lineup for the day, so please bookmark the day, 12th of November. Our theme is excellence, so you guys can prepare to embark on a journey of self-recognition, learning and growth, and you're going to be doing this both professionally and personally. Online Pet Health members, you get free VIP access to the day on the 12th of November. If you're not a member, it's even more of a reason to sign up, but you can also sign up to our free limited access pass on the day. Go to vetrehabsummit.com. Now, before we head over to the podcast, I just want to have a quick word from our sponsors. Maximize your dog's life and reduce their pain with Wiggleless back braces. Just because your dog is aging does not mean your dog has to live in pain. A back brace can provide mild support and help stabilize your dog's spine by decreasing excessive motion. This stabilization can lead to decreased inflammation and irritation to the spinal nerves. All good news for your dog. You can learn more at wiggleless.com and join us at the Vet Rehab Summit, where Wiggleless will be exhibiting and sponsoring. So over to my conversation with Tony. Hey, Tony, thank you so much for joining me.
Absolute pleasure, Meg.
Tony, please introduce yourself to the listeners and just tell us how you got involved and how you built up this interest in imposter syndrome.
I'm in Nottingham in the East Midlands in the UK, and started my own business 15 years ago after being involved with sort of corporate organisations. And during those 15 years, my business changed shape quite a lot, but I studied psychology up to masters and have a fascination in what makes me tick, first of all, but then helping heads of organisations and senior leaders in mostly in the UK deal with some of the psychological challenges that they face. I mean, I believe, Meg, that the greatest challenge leaders, business leaders or leaders, I know you obviously you work in the veterinary area, I believe the biggest challenge business owners face is their own thinking. And I became very fascinated in how our survival instinct plays out and survival thinking around about 2 years ago. And imposter syndrome been around since the 70s, but it's been talked about a lot the last 2 years. And it's for me, it's one of the manifestations of that survival instinct playing out in our own thinking, really.
So for those people that don't know exactly what it is, could you give us a definition and explain to them exactly what imposter syndrome is?
Yeah, well, the original definition was from 1978 from a couple of psychologists. One was Pauline Rose Clancy, the other was Susan Innes. And that quote then was used that it was the idea that you've only succeeded due to luck and not because of your talent or qualifications. And now there's different interpretations, I guess, over time. What I would say really is it's about the gap between how you see yourself, what you believe you need to be. Whatever that is, that can be as a parent, as a husband, wife, it can be as a business owner, leader, because I think this kind of thing shows up in various aspects of work and life. But in very simple terms, it's our own view of whether we're good enough for a particular role, based on what we believe that role needs. And obviously then we're talking about perceptions, because it's perceptions of our own qualities and it's perception of what is actually needed. And that's where a lot of the problems can come in, really.
Yeah, I mean, if I think about it, I've suffered from imposter syndrome. And I know you say you don't like to label people as somebody who has imposter syndrome. But I mean, I have in my professional career had moments of it, where I've actually thought, oh, am I actually the right person to be treating this patient? And what would my colleagues do? They'd probably do something better. And I remember actually when I qualified, I hated the fact that I was like a master of nothing, because, as a vet, you have to treat all different animals. And then we're the specialist for every single animal. I mean, things have changed a little bit over the years now. So like in the last sort of 5 to 10 years, more and more specialities in veterinary have popped up. But when I qualified, you had to, be the gynecologist, you had to be the anesthetist, you had to be able to do everything, right? And I never felt like I was really good at anything. I just felt like I was a master of nothing. And I hated that feeling. I absolutely hated it. And that actually led me to specialize in veterinary rehabilitation, because I thought as soon as I have a handle on something, I want to be the best in something. And then when people refer their patients to me or other vets refer to me, I know that I'm the best person to be treating that patient. But then I just had, once I specialized, I had the feeling, well, there is somebody else who is in my field that is better than me at this, and am I the right person? And just this constant doubt. But when I say constant, it was up and down, I didn't have it all the time. It was just in moments that I had these kind of feelings. And it was usually when somebody had questioned what I was doing, or if I'd got some negative feedback from somebody, or somebody put me down, or somebody did that, that's when the moments would come. And then I'd have other moments where I would be like, I've done so great for this patient, without me, this patient would have been put to sleep. And then I felt really good. Are there different ways in which imposter syndrome presents itself? I mean, is that the classical way where you sort of have up and down moments, or are there some people that are just constantly feeling like they doubt themselves and they're not the right person for the job?
Yeah, so just allow me for just a moment, Meg, to go back to basics, or I guess really, because if we go to the origins of our species a couple of million years ago on the Sahara Desert, basically the survival then was about, would there be a threat from a saber-toothed tiger or whatever, But in modern life, we are still very orientated to look for threats and danger, and that's where the survival instinct comes in us. Now, a lot of the times, obviously we've been through an incredible time the last 2 years, or 2.5 years, but a lot of the time, those threats are now not life-threatening. They're not physical threats. They're more about a threat to our ego, or a threat to our self-esteem. And so we're looking for threats, but then we internalize a lot of that. And then that is about really looking at, are we good enough? And you sort of touched on that phrase. And the problem is that we have those moments, and as you said, I don't like the term syndrome. We have moments where we feel exposed, we feel vulnerable. We might be comparing ourselves to somebody else. As you said, we then become a specialist, and then we're comparing to other specialists, and we look for our vulnerability, because we're constantly, unfortunately, we are primed to look for our weaknesses and vulnerability and threats. And that's what we're, as a species, we are continually monitoring the horizon and within for potential problems and things that could go wrong. And imposter moments, which is a phrase I much prefer to syndrome, is that moment where that vulnerability is about, am I good enough for this? Am I going to be exposed? Am I going to be found out? Very common, for example, when people are promoted into a new position. Because here's the thing, when you're promoted into a position, you're not the finished article, you're not perfect. People know this, organizations know this. And so, but the problem is for us, we move into a position, we're promoted into a position, or move companies to another position, and we are fearful of being exposed for a skill we don't have, or an area that we're not going to be competent enough. Where actually, I know the growth theme is very big in your community. It's all about the fact that we're continually growing, and we're able to make mistakes, hit challenges, learn from them, grow. but there's part of our psyche that doesn't handle that hugely well. It's very fearful of being exposed, found out, and any harm being caused, whether that be physical or more psychological, protection of the ego, that kind of thing, really.
Are there certain people that are more predisposed to having these imposter moments? I mean, I think it's not something that's often spoken about. So, I mean, within the veterinary field and definitely in the veterinary rehabilitation field, often we'll be thinking, we've got these thoughts and there's something wrong with us.
Yeah.
I mean, is it something that virtually everyone has? Do you have any like percentages of people that suffer from imposter moments or syndrome?
Well, here you go. And I know we'll probably talk about gender differences as well, but I was looking at a research paper recently where it was said that 49% of men struggle with imposter syndrome daily or on a regular basis, 52% of women. But for me, again, we all struggle with survival thinking. And imposter syndrome, imposter moments, they're an example of that. Now, some of us have them to a greater or lesser degree, and some of us cope better with them. But those are some of the statistics that I've seen in research, and I think it could well be higher, really. But certainly the percentages are higher in terms of the various forms of survival driven thinking that can hold us back and cause damage. But that means that's pretty likely that most of us will have moments, whether it be in our personal or professional life, where we will question whether we're good enough. And again, going back to that, what we feel is needed in that particular role, whatever it might be, and what we feel we are capable of, very often, for example, can be exposed as a parent and as a child and as a husband and as a wife, regardless of actually in the business world as well.
Yeah, and I wonder in the medical field, I mean, how prevalent it is. I think it's the kind of thing you don't really ever want to admit, right? That you doubt yourself or you think that you're there because just out of luck, I mean, I feel like I was really unprepared for qualifying as a vet. When I qualified, I went straight to England and I got a job on the Isle of Wight in Ryde in a mixed practice. And I remember just being completely overwhelmed. I mean, I got to this clinic and they said to me, here is your car keys and here are some boxes. Pack all the drugs and equipment that you think you're going to need. And I remember thinking, what? I don't know what I need. And I had the first year, loads of imposter moments. I can tell you that. I was just like, well, how on earth did I pass exams? Like, I don't know. But I got through it and obviously had the support of my fellow vets. But yeah, I wonder if it's something that the medical field specifically has, because we go from being a student where you have all the support to suddenly on your own expected to do so much and to know so much.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think certain situations can probably expose those kind of moments of thinking more than others, and particularly if you are more isolated, because again, that feels way more threatening, doesn't it? If you've got a team of people around you who you can work with, then it doesn't feel as threatening. But if you are isolated in a particular role, then you can feel exposed. I did some training, neuroscience training, with a doctor in the UK last year, and she was saying actually that it's very prevalent in the academic world as well, as people go up the sort of steps to lecturing, professor, or what have you. Because again, I guess you start to get isolated in that you feel a lot falls on your shoulders and you can be exposed more easily, really. And certainly sounds like your experience, Meg, in the Isle of Wight, sort of been thrown in at the deep end. And again, it's that thing about the fact that we are all, for me, I think it would be much better if, as human beings, we felt that we were good enough as we are, but we want to grow and improve. I think the problem is most humans operate from a place of not feeling good enough. And I think that, the dominance of survival thinking has a lot to do with that. And then we are, unfortunately, on a continuing battle to look to prove ourselves all the time, because we come from a default place of not feeling good enough. And I think actually be much better as a species if we could say we're good enough, our intentions are good, capable of growing all the time. There's some great work done historically by Carol Dweck, a psychologist in America, on growth mindset, fixed mindset. Really recommend the book Mindset, actually, by her. It's a great read. But that difference between accepting that we make mistakes, accepting that we all have challenges, accepting that our skills may not match up at first, but we can grow and improve our skills. All of these things that form part of a growth mindset is a much healthier way looking at ourselves, really, rather than, a mistake hits and we beat ourselves up when we start to look for all of the, psychologically beat ourselves up because we look at all of the, I guess, the vulnerability, and we don't like being exposed for making mistakes. But hey, we all make mistakes, don't we?
Yeah, and I think that when you qualify, it doesn't matter what you qualify in, whether it's your, the degree that you've done or the postgraduate you've done. You think that once you've qualified, then you should know everything about that specific topic, and so then when you don't, you have that kind of feeling, well, I should know this, and maybe I missed this in studies, but like you say, we have to have this acceptance that we're continually growing, right? So at Onlinepethealth, our motto is never stop learning. And that's it. You just got to, it's actually, yeah, it is. You got to just keep learning, because everything is changing and there are new things coming about all the time. And just be accepting that sometimes we don't know everything, and then it's actually okay. But if you're not striving to keep learning, that's not okay.
Yeah, no,
as long as you keep learning, it's all good.
And that's the thing, I talk to a lot of people in the UK, business people, leaders. And sometimes when I say about coming at things from a place of being good enough, people get a bit uncomfortable and they think, does that make you complacent? But it doesn't make you complacent if you think you're good enough as you are, but you want to continue to grow. And as you said, grow and learn. And I think another way this kind of thing can manifest, and you were sort of touching on it, I had a call in the UK with a woman who's in the marketing area last week. And we started talking about qualifications, because she appears to be on a path where she's got to keep getting more and more qualifications to validate herself. And I think a lot of people might relate to this, that they feel, well, if I get that qualification, then that will finally prove it. And it won't, because you'll get that qualification and then you'll see somebody else, as she did, who'd got a different qualification, and she wanted to step even further and further and further. And that's what I say, that problem, the problem with that path of not feeling good enough is you will never be able to prove yourself. If it's about your ego being, it's insatiable. Your ego will continually push you forward if you don't actually stand back from things and start to appreciate yourself as a person in the career that you do, and appreciate you're on a path of growth, and that you'll always be on that path of growth. You'll never be the finished article, and that's a good thing. That's a healthy thing. That's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard so many stories about vets exactly on that path, just wanting to get the next qualification and a master's in this and that, and exactly the same thing. They just said the feeling just never went away, and they were just desperate. If anything, to the listeners that are out there, I really just hope that by listening to this, it stops you on that path, because it's very destructive. You actually waste many years trying to, a lot of people have got qualifications and things that they didn't really even need, in just the hope that it would make them feel better. So yeah, I really hope that what we're discussing today is really helping those of you that are identifying now with what we're talking about. What are the other things that, somebody might feel? So we say, like, they think that they've just got there maybe by luck. It's a bit of self-doubt. Are there any other ways in which you could describe how somebody could feel? So just for the listeners out there to maybe identify, because I think it's one of the things where you actually sometimes don't know you suffer from it until you actually know about the condition, right?
Yeah. Okay. So there's probably, there's a few areas where you might start to notice yourself getting into this, not just this, believing there's a gap between where you need to be and where you are. Perfectionism is one particular trait as well. And for the perfectionists out of there, often, unless you are doing something that's critical, often 95%'s good enough. I work with a lot of people, and like, for example, working on their websites or something, and they just won't release it for months on end because they feel it needs to be 100%. So perfectionism is part of it, because again, the need for perfection means there's no vulnerability. There's nothing that, there's no flaw, so as I was talking about earlier. People pleasing is another classic one as well. So again, I'm working with another female senior leader where there's the need to please, too much of a need to please other people in the organization to the detriment of self sometimes, because we can be trying to stretch ourselves too much. Because in a way, again, that's about validation, isn't it? I say often, actually, that we look far too much for external validation from other people rather than internal validation. And that external validation, again, can be about, I feel I'm not good enough for this, and I need the feedback. And it's great, it's great to get positive feedback. But sometimes if you rely on that, then that can, I say, lead you down that path of trying to attempt to please people all the time to the detriment of self. And I guess another way can be procrastination as well, because we hold back from doing things and making decisions because, again, we're concerned about making a mistake, being found out, showing our flaws. And it's said that, as I was saying earlier, men and women, they're fairly equal percentages in terms of how many people say they experience this on a regular basis, but it manifests itself slightly differently in men and women, allegedly, as well. So with men, when they get hit with these moments, these confidence moments, because again, imposter syndrome is an example of self-confidence. Men are more likely to push through, but potentially, I guess, cause themselves greater stress, but they actually will push through. It's said in the research that the problem for women more so is it tends to hold them back. So it holds them back from going for promotions. I think the research I saw, 45% of women don't go for promotions they could probably do and have a really good chance of getting because they are concerned about being exposed and being found out. So, as I say, manifests itself slightly differently. But isn't that a tragedy, really, that women are holding themselves back from going for promotions or speaking out at meetings and offering often some, great intelligence and ideas, just for fear of being found, or, that fear of being found out, and I guess looking stupid or looking foolish or what have you.
Why do you think that is? Is that something to do with the survival psychology?
Yeah, it could be. I guess if we look at it in very basic terms, the origins of our species is that men were more hunter-gatherers, women were more nurturers, looking after the family unit, that kind of thing. Obviously, I'm talking historically here.
Yeah.
To a degree, there's an element of that. But the thing is, our psychology is both at once very sophisticated but very primitive. And some of those primitive drives can play out in that way, really. And I guess for men, when they have this sort of fear, vulnerability, then maybe there is just, from a genetics point of view, really more of a drive forwards to think, I'm going to push through. And then I say the problems they have are different, because probably results more in stress and overwhelm. Not saying, again, this is a generalization, and obviously there's a lot of women in business out there who experience stress and overwhelm as well, but that's maybe more of it. For women, the research would say that it manifests itself more in actually just holding back from doing the things that they could do. Maybe there would be more stress on that path, but they don't even get there because they're concerned at exposing themselves to that vulnerability, really.
So you mentioned earlier about people needing validation all the time to say that, that they've done something right or they're all good. Do you think that there's a generation linked to now, like maybe people that are younger are having imposter syndrome more? I know that, especially it always comes up, the millennials, right? So that's always the generation that comes up. But, I think about how kids are brought up now, and, everyone's a winner, and everyone, gets validated for everything that they do. You get, you win if you just try. Do you think that has an impact later on as they become adults, whether that'll cause imposter syndrome or get that self-doubt because they're not, once they leave home, they're not getting that validation and they're searching for that validation?
Yeah, there definitely could be an element to it. I think you're right, Meg, that over the years, there has been more of a shift in parenting style and education, really, I guess, to be more positive about effort and what have you. And I actually think, I think there's some good, I think there really is some good in that. Maybe the bigger challenge for millennials, Generation Z, Generation Alphas, as I was talking about on a talk recently. So people under the age of 12 who are coming through, there's already talk about what Generation Alpha looks like. But also we've got the social media challenge as well. So I think that, I've got a daughter who's 24 and has had a number of challenges on social media. So I think that, again, that vulnerability can be exposed more by being on those kind of platforms. And although there's been some great strides forward with social media and the way that we can connect, certainly on some of the platforms and some of the younger people, I think there is some damaging experiences that can have some big implications further down the line, really.
Yeah, especially with social media, people are always, looking at what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And they have that perception that that person is excelling, and then they question whether they're doing this as well as that other person. But we all know that it's often not true, what you see on social media is. So, social media must have a big part to play in it.
Yeah, and it's bringing out something that you spoke about earlier when you talked about, when you specialised and starting to look at other specialists. It is that competitive side of us. And again, a lot of people will say, competition's good and it's good to be competitive in sport or what have you. However, in day-to-day life, we're often looking over our shoulders at somebody else who we feel maybe better equipped, maybe brighter, may have more than us. And the problem is, we tend to always look upwards rather than to the sides or downwards. I think one of the big things in life is, and for me, actually, to be honest, on my own journey, is appreciating how fortunate you are sometimes in comparison with a lot of other people on the planet, rather than, and social media really pushes this, I think, this aspirational, look at this person, they're more attractive, they've got more wealth, they're brighter, they're more successful. And as you said, the reality of their situation can honestly be way different to what is being put forwards. And I think even without social media, you can get that, really. So, and that's that thing, about external comparison, external validation. I think it's much healthier to start to go within and see your own qualities and be great. Gratitude's been a big thing for a number of years, but it's got great merit, I think, about being more satisfied and grateful with where you are, who you are as a person, and those kind of things, rather than that continual looking at other people and feeling you're not good enough. That again, go back to that phrase, because it is such the crux of it, really. I'm not good enough, and I need to do more, I need more, and all those kind of things, really.
Yeah, and I think with that gratitude comes acceptance, right?
Yep.
And that's what we're trying to do, is accept ourselves for who we are. What are some other tips that you can give to overcome this imposter syndrome, that if one of our listeners is suffering from this or thinks they're suffering, what tips and advice could you give them?
Yeah, I guess just in the time we got today, probably 2 or 3 things, really. Well, first of all, I would say, Meg, to anybody who is listening to this who thinks they've got imposter syndrome, okay, this is just my view, you don't have imposter syndrome. What you have is what we all have challenges with, which is your survival thinking playing out. So actually, we need to normalize that. You've not got a syndrome, you are having moments where your survival instinct is kicking in. And this is a specific example where you're looking at what you feel you need to be and what you believe you are. So first of all, normalize it more. The second part of that, really, as well, and I think this has been a really important lesson for me over the last sort of 9 years. I was diagnosed with depression in 2013, and it was a journey then, and it's to actually just learn to cope with it. One of the big things for me was the fact that we are, as a species, allegedly. You know more about the animal kingdom than me, but allegedly we are a species that's able to be conscious of our own thinking. It's said that animals don't have that capability in the same way that human beings do. And what comes from that? So if you're having a moment where if you want to call it imposter syndrome or some imposter thinking's coming in, immediately just start to observe your own thinking. because you can sit above your own thinking. And from that place comes a place of power, because it almost immediately takes a little bit of the power away from the thinking that's going on. Because we're thinking species. You know, it's said that we have ridiculously something like about 50,000 thoughts a day, a lot of them negative, doubtful, for all the sort of reasons we're talking about. But the moment that you start to say, hang on a minute, what's going on here with my thinking, then you start to lessen the power of it, rather than just being sucked into a line of thought, which can, again, Meg, often spiral downwards if we leave it unchecked. And then one of the things I say to the people I work with is be your best coach, be your own best coach. Start to talk to yourself in a way, because we're talking to ourselves all the time, even though it's internal. Talk to yourself in a way that's much more helpful and kinder to yourself, and helping you see things differently. So hang on, it might be that you're thinking, oh, but I haven't got the right skills for this. But hang on a minute, you know, and talk to yourself like this. But what skills have I got? And how can I actually develop the skills that I feel I need further? You know, who can I work with? Who can I learn from? So it's starting to have better conversations with yourself as well. And then one final thing I would say, just to help people listening as well today, take more time to take stock of your achievements. I do this. I was working with, again, a female leader in the UK around the turn of the year, and she'd moved into a more senior position. And if you want to use it now, probably suffering a little bit of those imposter sort of thinking moments that she was having. And over the Christmas break, I said, I want you to go away and I want you to put a log down of all your achievements, right from childhood, you know, swimming badges, whatever it might be, qualifications. And I said, don't think they need to be huge. Just take stock through your life, the things that you've done and you've achieved. And when she came back to me after the break, she said, wow, I didn't realize quite how much I'd done in life and how much I have achieved. And I said, right, well, I want you to keep adding to that. And also I want you to reflect back on it, because here's the thing, we need something to challenge that more pessimistic side of our thinking that says, there are problems out there, we're not equipped for them, or what have you. By taking stock, and as you were saying, use the word appreciation, Meg, it is about appreciating what you've got within you, and then you can use that. I train people in public speaking in the UK, and one of the things I say is it's a technique that came through from classical conditioning in psychology. But remember certain times where you did great talks and start to build them into your memory bank. 'Cause we know this, don't we, that if you go back to certain occasions in life, you can get those same kind of feelings that you had at the time. And so I said, not only take or capture a log of the things you've achieved, but start to use them in situations. If you're going to go and do a talk, or I don't know, if you're going to go and do an important meeting or what have you, just take a moment, going back to some times when you've performed really well, remember what was going on, reconnect with all those emotions you felt at the time, because wow, doesn't it feel different then if you go into the new situation with those kind of emotional and psychological resources at your disposal, rather than going in with some of the more default ways of thinking that might hijack you and cause you problems.
Yeah, I love it. So basically, we have to just keep checking ourselves. So as soon as we start to have those negative thoughts, so it's really all about a mindset shift, right?
It is. And it's about a shift in perspective often, Meg. Here's the thing, something could happen. You and I could be doing this interview and actually physically sitting in a room. Something could happen. And if you ask us both what happened the next day, we'd probably have a different interpretation. We are all, there's a great quote from a psychologist, Korzybinski, that says, the map is not the territory. And what that means really is we're all creating maps of the territory, but we're creating our own view of reality, a view of things. The healthy thing about that is if we're creating views, we can actually change and create a slightly different view and a more helpful view, rather than the one that might come to us via default. It is about the fact that shifting your thinking to see yourself differently, your world differently. We all have the capability to do that. And often we don't. We just go with what comes into our mind, which can often be quite destructive, rather than pausing, finding some space and saying, hang on a minute, I don't need to go with that line of thinking. I can change it. I can change my thinking. I can see things differently, see myself differently, see a person I'm interacting with differently, see my world differently.
Yeah, and like you say, so often, you'll be feeling a certain way, and then afterwards, like, so let's say you've done a speech or something, and then you'll say to somebody, they'll go, "Oh, well done, that was so great." They'll go, "Oh, was I okay? Like, I really thought I was so nervous, or I didn't come across, or I forgot this and that." And then they would say, "No, it didn't come across that way at all." And it's exactly what you're saying, is that often what's going on in our minds is actually not what's happening in reality.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think we've also got to be resilient as well. I mean, you talked about feedback earlier. Here's something that a lot of people will relate to. When I was an open university tutor in the UK a number of years back, at the end of the year, you've had about 20 students and you get feedback. And typically 18 or 19 of those would be good. There'll be one or two that were less positive, and you tend to focus on those too much, rather than the realization that 90% of the students were really happy. And actually, again, you get yourself to a better place where you think, but I'm not going to take that too personally. I'm just going to learn from it. Let me see if there's anything useful in the feedback they're giving me that means I could improve further and become a better, whatever it might be, lecturer. So changing our view on feedback, that growth mindset, fixed mindset piece I was talking about earlier. A lot of the time, if we get feedback that's more critical, we can go straight on the defensive and feel threatened, rather than think, well, I'm never going to be perfect, but actually, if I learn from this feedback, then I can get better. I can, maybe next year, rather than 18 students, I'll have 19 being positive, and maybe I'll always get one I don't connect with as well as I might, but that's okay. Again, it's that thing about perfectionism, isn't it? You can't be everything to everybody. So yeah.
Tony, thank you so much. It's been such an interesting chat. Before we finish off, I know that you've actually authored a book. It's called The 7 Steps to Peak Performance as a Business Leader. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that book?
Yeah, I guess the first thing to say, it was written in 2015. So it's I'm due another book. I think I was saying to you, Meg, before we did the interview today, that the whole survival psychology piece, I'm talking about that a lot in the UK. I'm doing talks at events. So my thoughts are I'd like to turn that potentially into a book or a TEDx talk over time. Just finding it interesting playing with the material more. But yeah, the book's available on Amazon. But yeah, written 7 years ago, but I'd still stand behind probably 95% plus of it. I mean, I've changed over the last 7 years, but yeah, it's a lot of positive strategies, again, coming from the angle of approaching your role in business in a positive way and doing positive things in what is in the book, 7 different aspects of leadership. But if people want to connect with me, I'm very active on LinkedIn. So Tony Brooks, if you look for me on LinkedIn, I don't know how many Tony Brookses there are on LinkedIn actually, but yeah, Tony Brooks without an E, and you'll find me on there as a leadership psychologist. And be lovely to connect. And I do stuff on a daily basis. I do 3 leadership tips videos every Friday and have done for about 4 years now. I think I've only missed one Friday when it was Christmas Day, but I'm typically there every Friday. So yeah, it would be great to connect with people who are listening to the show today. And
then your website for the listeners?
Yeah, it's called theleadershiptrainingworkshop.com. Bit of a mouthful. Yeah, the leadershiptrainingworkshop.com. Probably best ways to go into LinkedIn anyway, because you can find the website addresses in the contact info and what have you. So yeah.
And for the listeners, we'll put all the links of the LinkedIn as well as the website URL in the description. Tony, Brilliant. It's been such a pleasure chatting to you. Thank you for sharing your knowledge, and I'll be looking out for that next book of yours.
I'm going to keep you posted, Meg. I'll get a copy over to South Africa as a freebie for you being kind enough to invite me onto your podcast series. But don't hold your breath. It probably won't be this year for sure. Anyway.
Thanks, Tony. Have a great day.
Thank you, Meg.
Bye-bye. If you enjoyed this podcast, please hit the subscribe button so you get notified every time I load a new podcast. I'm here every week talking to vet rehab therapists from all over the world about all things vet rehab. A big thanks to our sponsor, Wiggleless. Their sponsorship allows us to be able to give this podcast to you for free. So please go and check them out at wiggleless.com. Don't forget to also bookmark the next Vet Rehab Summit. It's on the Saturday, the 12th of November. I invite you to come and be a part of the world's largest online veterinary rehabilitation conference created specifically for you, the vet rehabber community. Onlinepethealth members get VIP complimentary access to the Vet Rehab Summit. For more information about continuing education for vet rehabbers, you can go to onlinepethealth.com.